language question appears on your English language exam paper, appears both as words on paper 1, 12 marks on paper 2. Today we're actually going to look at paper 2 language questions, so it's non-fiction based. This skill has huge crossover with your literature exam, so it's really important that it's a kind of main skill you're focusing in your studies. So the language question on the language exam paper always work in the way the question is at the top. How does the writer use English to describe, given a particular, in this case it's the Lake District. So because the question change, the sources change, there's quite a lot that we're in control of. We know we see the questions and we know the kind of word systems that be in our questions. So there's different sources of better. The thing we need to do language question is to identify the italics at the top of the extract will be in a little box on your exam paper. And we need to think about what we learn at right first. Predominantly written text. I don't make for always a person when you see something a lot of information from this text at the top of the page. From a chef's library banks. In this extract, it is entering at Oxford University. He returns to as soon as he can. So the first bit of information important is the way the surname, because then for the response, I'm really understanding very clearly the piece of writing is constructed. The words didn't spontaneously appear on the page. He's in his early 20s, so he's relatively young, believe it or not. And perhaps there's a little bit of willing to be independent and check out on his own. Very academic. Back on him this one clearly and enjoying that he gets to spend to the farm or to read the source. So that's our kind of key made highlight at the beginning. Work through the extract, highlight any example of deliberate, effective language choices. Principally, we're thinking about personification. There's always examples of the exam papers that have to be really good to write about. The stuff you can write about the adjectives, but you can then see connotations of words that have been selected, different meanings being put into our heads. Okay, so I'll read the about a month. It feels as if I am now to the land I long really. I understand for the first time that our sense of belonging is about participation. We belong because we are part of the work of this place. So I got up early and shepherded, and half an hour of work makes me feel part of it again, like I can shed my other skin. There was a heavy dew on the grass, and the ewes' backs were silver. My boots were sodden when I came back for breakfast. We then drove up the Eden Valley through an autumnal landscape, through air with bite to it. Sunlight lay like smoke in the hollows, resting before it made the long afternoon trek up the fell sides. The lichened stones shone silver in the thinning light. The hedges flecked with blood-red spots of rose hips. The chimneys of the farmhouses marked again by whispers of wood smoke. My heart aches because I know that in my new life I am divorced from the changing of days and the seasons. Things have changed a great deal from the month I've been away. I see big changes instead of the little ones I've always lived with. Autumn comes quickly here. The life bleaches out of the leaves and grass with each passing day. A landscape of green turns brown. The heather on the fells turns until it is the russet of a kestrel's wing. So just a quick reminder of those methods I just talked about, metaphors, similes, and personification. Metaphor is something that's not meant literally but figuratively. A simile is using like or as to compare two things, and personification is giving an object human characteristics. So have a read back through the text yourselves and see if you can identify any of these methods. So hopefully you've managed to identify a couple of those methods in action in this text. Just to take you back through it and identify some for you. I'm not going to identify them all, but I'm going to identify the ones that I feel are written most purposefully and the ones that I perhaps have more to say about, because we do need to be a little bit precise with our choices. It's no good just saying, well, that's a simile, and therefore the fact that I can identify it as a simile is important. It isn't. It's what you can write about it with clarity, preferably, that's vital. So here I got up early in shepherding, and half an hour of work makes me feel part of it again, like I can shed my other skin. So that's an example of a simile. We've got there was a heavy dew on the grass and the ewes' backs were silver. So the description of the ewes' backs as being silver is another example of metaphorical language. We've then got down here the description of the air having bite to it. That's example of personification. We've also got personification in sunlight lay like smoke in the hollows, resting before it made the long afternoon trek up the fell sides. Quite a long example of personification there. We've got the stones shining silver again in the thinning light. So we've got some nice alliteration or sibilance here as well with the repetition of the S sounds, which create a nice soft sound that the writer is perhaps drawing on. We've got the hedges flecked with blood red spots of rose hips. And we've got the chimneys of the farmhouses marked again by whispers of wood smoke. So I'm only going to go through the first paragraph, but as you can see, there's lots of examples of figurative language being used by the writer. Your job is to identify which two you can write about in detail. Two is plenty to write about if you've got lots to say about them. What you are trying to do with your language analysis is to get to be clear. And you get clarity by delving into the meanings that are being put across by the writer, not just simply saying he's describing it as silver so we get an image of the colour, but going into a little bit more depth, a little bit more precision about why that particular word has been chosen. Do it once, you're at the bottom of clear. Do it twice and you're towards the top end of clear instead. And that gives you plenty of marks in the exam. So I've picked out a couple of examples that I'm going to show you now, and this is part of our considering the different synonyms, the different alternative words that certain words bring to mind. So the first one I'm going to pick is shed my other skin, which I've identified as a simile, and I'll be using that to construct my answer. Shed, the verb shed means to leave something behind. He's left his university life behind, but it's also got this idea of altering and changing, such as his transformation from a student to a shepherd. The shepherd skin seems more comfortable to him. He seems to want to leave the student life behind and feels like he's lost something by not being there back in the Lake District. It conjures up an image of transformation. The word shed is that idea of being able to change. He's changing, but also he doesn't seem to want to change. So he's changing because of his life, because of the education he's receiving, because he's away from this landscape, but he's conflicted because he doesn't seem to want these changes to take place. So in terms of how he's using language to describe the Lake District, it's almost like the part of him that he wants to retain, to hold on to. He feels like he needs to get to be part of the landscape again. The other one that I've picked out is the ewes' backs were silver, focusing here on the choice of the adjective silver, which shows how precious the sheep are to him, but the sheep are also a symbol of the landscape itself. So he's romanticising rural life. He's romanticising life in the countryside because he's been away from it. So he's choosing to see it in a positive way, because absence makes the heart grow fonder, as the saying goes. And he's very much experiencing this at the minute. He's been away for a month, and when he comes back, he sees beauty and he sees joy in everything around him, where he wouldn't necessarily have seen it in that way if he'd been there the whole time. So what I want you to think about now is which other words, which other methods would you pick out, and what would you say about them? How are they being used effectively by the writer? Okay, so when you've gone through and you've highlighted your ideas, you've identified which bits you want to focus on and which bits you want to draw attention to in your answer, you need an essay structure. And the essay structure I'm going to show you is a pretty foolproof essay structure that you've seen before. Basically, the bits in bold you stay with all the time, no matter which essay you're writing, you stick with these bits, and then you follow the bits in brackets. You've got to write about 2 examples, as I said before. It's no good just writing about 1, because if you've not been clear, that means you're at the bottom of the grade of the level below, which puts you a long way off where you need to be getting a 4 or above. So if 1 goes wrong, at least you've got the other 1 to fall back on. And again, it might lift you towards the top of the level if you've managed to do 2 clear examples, or write about 2 clear examples of language. So the writer uses A and insert the method there. So that will be the writer uses a simile, the writer uses a metaphor, the writer uses personification, alliteration, whatever it may be. That goes in that first lot of brackets. 2, and then tell us what it is that the writer is using that method for. So if I take the first one in red on the sheet, the writer uses a simile to describe how he feels when he returns to the Lake District. The reason that we're putting that in, and not just saying the writer uses a simile and putting the quote in, is we're starting to be really clear about the use of language from the very first sentence of our answer. So we're being precise about what the simile is being used for, and that encourages us, or you as writers, to continue that focus throughout the rest of your answer. What I then suggest you use is a colon. What you don't really want to use in your answer is, I know this because it's in this quote. That wastes time, and time can be quite pressing in this exam. So if you use a colon and then you put your quote in, you are saving yourself time that may come in very useful later on when you're doing one of the longer questions. Then you just insert your quotation. Keep it as brief as possible. So in my case, it would just be shed my other skin. Then bring the writer's name into it, which will either be on the front of your source booklet or it will be at the top of the extract. So here Reedbanks uses, and then zoom in on a word, the word class if you know it. So in this case, here Reedbanks uses the verb shed. And then what does that imply? Well, I've got all my meanings up at the top of the page. It means to leave behind, to alter. It's the idea of feeling comfortable in one particular skin. It's the idea of transformation and the idea of conflict. And all that would need to come into my answer. The longer I can spend analysing one quotation, the better, because it means I'm going into more depth and detail. And that's where you pick up lots of marks. So what I want you to do now is use this same structure. You can write about shed my other skin if you want to, because the answer isn't written in front of you. It's simply the notes. I would then like you to try and write about a different quotation of your own and follow that same format. Okay, thank you very much.